If you were born around 20 years ago and had a slight case of the ADHDs and just about everything that makes you hyper-focus on one thing and one thing only, you might have came across games that itch just the right part of your mind, those primarily being collection games. In my case, this was the world of balls, more specifically, Bakugan. A lot of you might know this game, or more importantly, the show. Now, I never had a giant connection to this as I just didn't watch it and I wasn't really all that into it, but the game, now that's a different story. The game to me is just one of my most favorite comfort games. I played this when I was sick, lonely, mostly just lonely. So I had the brilliant idea to do what I've already done twice, and that is 100%ing Bakugan Battle Brawlers. I hope you can enjoy this video, and all I ask is that you support me by giving me a follow on here, and maybe check out my Twitch where I also stream these challenges and other fun stuff. With that, let's get ready to throw some balls. As I launch into the game, I check out the older saves that I already have on here, which are mostly from 2012 and 2013. These were mainly my cousin's saves, as I want to say this copy of the game was theirs, and I for some reason ended up with it and continue to cherish every living moment with it. Either way, I just ended up deleting one of my saves I had from the years prior and moved on with the challenge. As we go in, we get an introduction to the story, which we can skip because I'm more than sure that if you're watching this, you already know what it is. The game then prompts us to put in our name. I don't know how stupid this game thinks I am, but this was no challenge for me. Before I move on, it's important I clarify what I actually did in the name section, mostly for the challenge. Most games 10 to 15 years ago had cheats you can input through codes using either a naming system or a dedicated little option button. On here, putting a code in through the name area, we can unlock this cool little Bakugan as to get a real start to actually collecting everything. Now, if your worry is that this would help too much in the game and make it super easy, fret not, because the next decision will quickly put your mind at ease. In this next menu, we can select the attribute we're going to start with and mostly main. Now, you can switch on to other attributes, but I mostly stick by this, as we get a special little partner soon that'll match up with whatever we put here. The Wario Bakugan, or whatever it's called, is the attribute Pyrus, and the one that I chose is equivalent of choosing a grass starter in Pokemon. With that chosen, we can move on to the part where I do what I do best, and that is character creation. After making what basically looks like a terminally ill patient, I'm sorry if that sounded mean, we're put into a scene where our character is being bullied by this fat fuck named Shuji. Along with Shuji is his rat teeth wearing brother, Kira, and after a bit, it just so happens that the #1 battle brawler in all the world is somehow at the exact same park at the exact same time as I'm getting bullied. Whatever this coincidence may be, that shoots us off into the tutorial, which we have no problems finishing. With that done, we can glaze Dan on his cool ass Bakugan and head to the Bakugan store ourselves where we meet Alice. Alice basically calls us broke and quickly kicks us out of the store before we spread whatever disease she thinks we have. Going back to the park, we can get the cutscene of our new partner in crime, Leonidas, who might just feel bad for us, so in turn, joins our team. With that, this is where the real stuff starts to play out. We can head back to the store to see what we can buy, which is basically nothing, but we do end up with one thing waiting for us there. After purchasing Wario for a crisp 0 Bakugan points, I then made a slight mistake in my judgment on what we needed to do next. I never really explained what 100%ing this game really means, so let's get down to it. The first and obvious thing is to buy everything from the store. That includes the Bakugan themselves, the cards, and even upgrade every type of Bakugan to level 5. The next is to normally beat the story, but as well complete the park challenges. These only unlock after I beat the story, and here's where I made my mistake. If we look at the challenge board, which marks our progress on what we need to do, I need to beat every person in the park at least once. So after every tournament, which I'll get into a bit, a new character can be fought at the park. Me seeing that, I headed there immediately and would fight anybody that would show up at the moment. Now, it's not so much a terrible thing, as we do get a good amount of money, which we'll need a whole shitload of, but it is a big time waster for completing the story. Either way, if you're thinking about doing this, I don't really think it's as worth as you might deem it. For now though, I'll enter the first tournament of the game, which is all single battles. This was extremely easy, but does give me the opportunity to explain how the game works a little bit. We start off by playing a card of our choice on the field. These cards all have different effects for different attributes, but you mainly want to use the one that you have, obviously. The goal is to win 3 cards, whether they be yours or the enemy's. We can win these cards in one of 2 ways. Double stands, which means getting 2 back on the same card, or by battling. Double stands is basically the pussy's way out of most battles, so you can expect to see me use this somewhat frequently in the later stages. One downfall of it though is the smaller amount of money you get, which in case I need to remind you, we need a lot of. For battling, it's also super simple. You land on the same card as an enemy, the goal is to have more power than the other one, and you play against them at a random pool of 3 minigames. My favorite out of the 3 is the timing battle, since it lets me sit on my lazy ass as I play, but as well, it's just the most responsive. The shooting isn't too bad, but good lord, sometimes it's just very set on letting your enemies win. The shaking is just absolutely dog shit. I mean, most of the inputs don't really work. The only parts that work are level 1 and 2, and the rotating motion in level 3 just doesn't fucking work at all. Oh, and in case I forgot to mention, every minigame has 3 levels of difficulty, which is also random as we move on, but for the most part, it stays at 3. So, for now, I'll soak in the easiness of the challenge since the cartilage in my wrist will soon give out. Alright, I hope that sums it up for you. I'm sorry if you got really bored with that explanation, but it's very necessary to understand my angle with all this. With Shuji B again, we have Runo to go against being just as easy because for some reason, the smartest Bakugan brawlers can't find their fucking card in a small 2x2 box. I don't know how stupid this game expects the 21-year-olds to be playing this game, but man, the expectations must be low. After beating Runo and Marucho, that concludes the first tournament of the game. We can head to the park to receive another tutorial on how the next tournament is going to be, which is going to be in the style of a double battle. There isn't anything crazy about this change, all that happens is we get another teammate and an extra person to go against, and it usually goes by a bit faster if your teammate wins his battles. Once again, we faced off against the Numbnut twins and easily win that battle, and looking back on it, they might not actually be related. Getting that done, I had some money to actually spend on Bakugan, and since most of the ones you start off with easily get left behind by more powerful ones, it's easier just to buy instead of upgrade. Going into the next tournament is where stuff gets a bit more overwhelming if you don't actually know the game, so let me try and explain what's on your screen. In this new map, which actually helps water Bakugan more if you didn't guess by all the blue surrounding your screen, we can throw our Bakugan into the field and move around in order to gather more stuff for the battles. With the disadvantage of having stamina that drains faster than meth addict syringes, we can get to places a lot easier by targeting one specific place in the map. By going towards this ramp and falling in, we'll be pushed into a sort of dedicated ramp where we can collect these coins that boost power. Another thing we can get are these cards that are usually floating around somewhere, and by grabbing these we can get different effects for our Bakugan, or even ones that mess with an enemy's vision. They're pretty useful early on, though the vision one kind of becomes minute since the AI can figure out where the fuck they want to go since they don't have eyes. That's all you really need to know right now, but there is a little more I'll get into as we move on. As for how the tournament went, it went by pretty easily, beating the first pair Jenny and Jules, who fortunately don't really have any special Bakugan on them. The next two, Billy and Kombo, who I always for some reason related the two with Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King, weren't much of a problem. I will note, however, on the Bakugan that both of them have, since they aren't much of a problem right now, but as time goes on, they'll get a bit more scary to go against. Billy's main Bakugan is a Cyclops looking dude who I've always loved the design on, but just never really got to use it. His power is pretty high for being early on in the game, but as we move on to a different map, that will create more of a threat than the place he's the weakest at. Kombaa's special Bakugan is a small harpy looking thing that screeches like a madman when you beat it. Apart from being annoying, it's just an enemy to look out for in the later stages, especially when its attribute aligns with the stage. With mainline characters, this rule kind of triples, as the power for every big name Bakugan is easily starting at 400 and can go up to 700 when combined with their gate cards. For now though, let's get through the normal tournaments first. The next two fights were with Julio and Chun-Li, with Julio having Chaos Bakugan and Chun-Li using Pyros, which is the same as Dan's. Julio's special Bakugan is the fucking creepiest thing to look at, especially in the next map we play in, since it's just a giant eyeball that rarely blinks. I hate going against this thing, but I'll get into the reason why later on. As for Chun-Li, her Bakugan is fucking sick. I'm just going to show it on screen because I have no way of describing this thing, but I will say, I usually just try to ignore this and Julio's Bakugan at all costs in order to get by. It's a terrifying world we live in, but either way, we beat these two with relative ease. The last fight of the match is against Runo, who we fought against in the first tournament, and Marucho. Runo will have her special Bakugan this time around, but other than having high power enemies, she isn't the biggest threat here. Marucho, on the other hand, is our main worry, as the most of the fights can easily go in his favor with the map matching his type. His special Bakugan is easily my favorite out of the whole game, since it has the ability to switch types, but the main reason is one I'll show later on in the video. For now though, getting through this battle was a bit of a challenge, but not to say I had trouble. Just using the normal strat of going through the same route over and over would help my Bakugan get to a way higher level in order to make up for the disadvantage. Once we beat those two, we officially beaten the second tournament of the game. The next tutorial we get is a new style of Battle Royale. I hate that anytime I think of that word, the big fort and knight is all I can think about. With the Battle Royale mode unlocked comes the next tournament using that style, but that's not the part that worries me about it. The worst part about the next tournament is the stage. The stage is a desert style area that is more open and doesn't really have any strict path routes I can take to get more power. The worst part is also that surrounding the whole thing is quicksand that'll easily pull you in and waste a huge chunk of your stamina. Apart from the stage just sucking ass to play around with, the enemies are just as bad since most are going to be absolutely deadly. For now though, let's go over what happened. Starting off, I of course looked for a good route to adapt to since most of the Bakugan we're going to fight are going to be a hell of a lot higher than I am. As for how that went, it went, well. In all seriousness though, I was able to find some sort of route in the giant ball of dust, but the chances of me missing the card and running out of stamina is extremely high. As for the battle, we were able to beat Kira and Shuji's Bakugan pretty easily, ignoring Billy since he has the biggest type advantage, and getting a double stand in order to finish the first fight. The next group is what I'd call the Freaks of Nature. I remember having so much trouble as a kid. Hell, even as a sophomore in high school when I started to play this game again. These guys can give you a good amount of trouble. And yes, I'm talking about the fucking eye that is in the middle of a desert during a sandstorm. The PTSD I get from this area is crazy, but I think all of it is due to a very certain reason. I'm a stupid man-child that refuses to learn how games work. For some reason, this time around, I finally dedicated my brain space to learning how to collect everything around the map, so the only difference between then and now is the fact that I actually get the boost surrounding me. Another good thing to attribute is that I mostly land on my own cards. After all, it's going to be the only landing pad you have for most of these fights. One of my turns, I landed on Chun-Li's card, leaving me more open than your mother in front of your friends. A funny little thing I forgot to mention about Bakugan is how you can just throw an absolute heater at another Bakugan and absolutely kill it if you hit it right. Most of the time in the later stages, this doesn't do much against enemies, but the other way around, it is detrimental. Here's a good example of what that looks like.
Bakugan Brawl! Bakugan Critical KO. Sorry you can't have it your way.
Yeah, so I had my work cut out for me. I locked the fuck in with a shooting minigame and somehow still won. For the final fight, I always use Leonidas to finish things off and get a more certain win, as I like to save my card boosts all for the last fight. With that last card, that's the second to the last fight of the tournament done, with a nice little surprise at the end of it. Going back to the menu, I saw that Alice had a new Bakugan, and checking in, I was able to get an even better one called Fear Ripper. Fucking Fear Ripper. You're telling me some 8-year-old, if he was lucky enough, could just have the ruler of hell? The last fight of the tournament is a scary one since all 3 of my enemies are mainline characters, that being Marucho and Runo again, but also including the star of the show, Julie. Julie has all ground Bakugan. Her special Bakugan is called Gorum. Now, if you're not scared of Gorum, then you're not scared of the right things. He fucks, and he fucks good. I know, since I've been getting manhandled for a very long time during this section of the game. I'm probably making more of a deal for this tournament than I probably should be, but it's just what I've been conditioned to think. To prove how much the difficulty jumps during this tournament, let's go over my first attempt at the stage. I started off with Fear Ripper landing on Marucho's card, already a big mistake, to which Marucho responds by using his strongest Bakugan right off the bat. He then proceeds to power him up by 300 points using one of his ability cards. I proceed to lose that battle by a small amount, so I continue to land on my card, which is where Julie landed on with one of her weaker Bakugan. In this battle, she started 100 points below me. After she was done, I was 500 points below her. A huge factor of this game came from 2 things you might have noticed. You see, when you do a battle royale, Bakugan decided that leaving the other people to do nothing while 2 people fought was too boring. So instead, they decided that anybody who had lower power would get the help of not only 1 person, but 2 people. Having these helpers immensely helps the person fighting against the other person who only has 1. And that being me in this scenario is what brought me down to the ground. We can also thank the type advantage she gets, which also doubles the points, which is awesome, but there's one thing I have yet to talk about that is the utmost importance. If we go back to the view of the stage, we see everything I talked about. The points, the stamina recharges, the cards, everything except for the giant shit-covered crystals in the air. These crystals are probably the most important thing in the whole game. They make or break your wins in most cases. So what do? Breaking one by aiming at them gives you effects that you can use during battle. The first one pauses the enemy during any time in battle, and the second one lets you decrease the amount of points they get during that. The main one that Julie used was one that increases the amount of points she gets for a certain duration of time. This can just leave you ahead by a mile for most cases. Other ones include swapping points, so you can really just do nothing, let the enemy get super ahead, and then just switch at the end of the fight. The worst of this bunch is the mystery points. I fucking hate this effect. It does nothing to help you 80% of the time, and can most of the time help the enemy. It's absolute garbage, so anytime I get this, which is a lot during the later stages, I would be immensely disappointed. The worst part is, you can't just go get another one to overlap this one. No. You have to use this or it won't go away. I'm getting sidetracked, but just know, these effects are useful. I'm sure you can see that with the fight I just lost. After that, I decided to quit and try again because there's no way in hell I'm making a comeback after that. The second time around, I finally went after the effect cards, which helped crazily against the first fight with Runo. I almost completely just lost this minigame. I wasn't too far off from Runo's points, but knowing how Bakugan can be, it's no guarantee that it would help get those extra points. So, using the effect boosted me past her, and I got my first card of the battle. The second was against Marucho, who's actually easier to win this time around for some reason. Probably because he landed on my card and I got a timing battle which I've yet to lose in since I'm just morbidly a beast at this minigame. To finish it all off, I did what any low self-esteem person would do in a video game and pussied out by using a double stand. With that battle complete, we ended up getting a cutscene introducing the main enemy of the game, Standard Emo Kid 5001. I actually don't know his name, but I think his Bakugan is called like Mordok or something. But for now, we end up getting into a whole battle against just him. This went just as you would expect, as we defeated him with pretty much relative ease, except for the damn sand everywhere pulling me away from the cards I need to get onto. With him defeated, Marduk Palm tells us to not show up to school the next morning as he storms off, leaving us with the Subterra tournament finally complete. The next stream around, I picked back up where I left off, which is actually not true because I ended up forgetting to save, so I had to do the whole thing again. I did everything I needed to and even made sure to pick up Fear Ripper again, and I still can't get over the damn thing. Now, if you told your mom that the game about balls had a guy named fucking Fear Ripper, she'd immediately say it was unholy and take the damn game away. I leveled him and the rest of my Bakugan up, mostly in the power area, and wherever the Bakugan has the lowest level in. Starting on the Ventus tournament is where I'll thrive the most. The enemies that are usually the biggest threat instantly turn into an even battle when I land on their card. Knowing this, along with the fact that every other tournament after this are just single battles, helps soothe my worries about fighting over leveled monsters the whole time. Entering the first battle against Jules, I instantly recognize a path that I can use the whole time during this tournament. Apart from just having a dedicated area to getting my level up, we also have the power-ups we can get from the crystals high up in the sky. With all that together, it makes for a very easy tournament as I pretty much swept the whole thing and only giving up one card to Shun at the very end. We get another surprise by Emo Kid's best friend, Mag Reloader, who is actually the villain for the actual Bakugan story. Luckily, the ability we chose matches the stage, so fighting him wasn't abnormally impossible, but was actually a challenge compared to who we fought. What is so challenging about this guy? Well, maybe the 8-foot dragon that has a base stat of 600 power and more when we land on his goddamn card. Thankfully, the shaky minigame played nice with me and was able to get the first card right off the bat. The second fight wasn't as crazy in the beginning since the power difference wasn't that far apart, but the ending almost led to a loss as it was just a bit away from me losing. To end things off in the best way I know possible, I did the craziest thing I could have ever done. I double standed. With him out of the way for now, that is the Ventus tournament put to rest and only 2 more left to go. After grabbing a new party member and pumping him full of antibiotics, we can head on to the next tournament that I absolutely despise over its map. The Pyres tournament is what you would expect from a map about fire, hard to reach jumps, little amounts of power boosts and cards, and fire just about everywhere on the goddamn map. When I say this is a problem, it's a problem, as every time you do go over the fire, it's minus 5 G points. Now, you might say, hey, that's not so bad, but when 85% of the map is fucking covered in fire, it's kind of hard to avoid that. As far as how the tournament went, it actually wasn't as difficult as the early stages due to most of the fighters I fought against having low power Bakugan. The path that was best in the map was also super easy to get to since the jump pad was pretty much on the floor compared to where it's floating in the air when we get to the later fights. On the topic of later fights, I ended up having to reset my first go around battling Dan since I was just very distracted with chat and another excuse I can't really seem to find. Either way, the second time around I was able to beat him and Dragonoid, but not without a good challenge. The next tournament is where shit gets real, as it's the last tournament of the game. Not to say that the game ends right after it, but it'll be the last one to get through for now. You might be wondering, why does it get real? Well, for one good reason, my friends. Evolution. You see, in the Bakugan show, at a certain point, the main character's Bakugans end up basically evolving, like Pokemon, into a stronger and basically cooler forms that they can all use. So what that means for me is that because the tournament includes every mainline character who has an evolved Bakugan, I, who do not have such a thing, have to fight them. This is absolute bullshit, mostly because it was already hard enough slightly beating their best Bakugan in a normal fight, but with this, they all have boosted up monsters along for the ride. The first of the 7 people we have to fight is Marucho, and this wraps back to my earlier point of why I love his Bakugan so goddamn much. Marucho's Bakugan, Preyas, who's originally an Aquos type, actually has a super unique ability compared to the rest, as he can change into any type of Bakugan he wants to. Now, I want to say in the game, this is a little different since it's nerfed with the fact that you have to spin a wheel to get what attribute you want. But that's not even the coolest part about him, since he not only has one evolved form, he has 2. It's crazy. But it doesn't end there. Both Preyas, Angelo, and Diablos, their names, have not only one attribute, they both have dual attributes. The typing Angelo has is Water and Chaos, while Diablos has Water and Pyros, which is absolutely absurd since that means he can just be whatever the fuck he wants to be. Not even that is what makes him the coolest, since the designs are even better because just look at these guys. You're telling me you wouldn't see this as a kid and not try to get them on your team? I'm getting very off track here, but the main problem we have are these two, and for very good reason. So let's go over the first attempt at fighting Marucho. I lost. Yep, I was pretty much getting absolutely manhandled by this kid who's 3'8" and is a spitting image of the nerd emoji. So what did I do wrong? Well, the first fight was actually the only time I was lucky since I got to fight who we need to when going against Marucho, and that's the unevolved version of Preyas. After that, it was just me basically fucking up the whole time with my shots, missing the crystal, and as well having a hard time with the map's floor since it's actually horrendous to move around since it'll only just slow you down and waste energy. Once he got a double stand after my second time not landing on a card, I decided to reset for my second attempt. So what's going to be the key to beating these guys, since it's very clear that they're miles apart in power, confidence, and everything else I don't have? Well, if you remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned a strat that you can use to actually beat people. I'm going to double stand the shit out of everybody. It's the only way I can actually get past these fights, so don't judge me too harshly. The first fight against Marucho went smoothly, fighting against first form Prace again, then double standing for the second card, and finally, I'll end up using Leonidas as my last form of attack since I can just juice him the hell up and win by a good amount of power. Luckily, the next couple of fights weren't all too bad, mostly because the other Bakugan that they use aren't just other evolved forms of their main Bakugan. Both Julie and Shun were the easiest of the bunch, mostly due to just having a good card boost in hand that could help me defeat their hardest monster. Runo was mostly the same deal, but I will say that the type advantage could definitely stir this fight up if you aren't lucky enough or are just a bit underpowered. What really did stir my ass up was once again the heart of the whole show, Dan, since he completely destroyed me the first time around. It was a combination of me fucking up a lot of times and landing on his cards that completely help him out in every way possible, but also the one minigame that I can't seem to get enough of. The damn shaking minigame that completely just doesn't work 90% of the time. I've been over this before, but most of my losses around these times just all come from trying to win during this minigame, even with the boost card in hand. The rage that bottles up during these fights could power Chernobyl right now, but what's done is done, and I can count that towards the lost leaderboards. For the second time around, again, I got a lot luckier getting on my cards, and even during the minigames, since I got the ones that don't actually completely suck ass. To finish Dan off, I do what any self-respecting battle brawler would do, and double stand it to move on to the next fight, Masquerade. It's actually kind of funny how easy they made this fight, since I destroyed this dude's ass. Comes with experience, I guess. What really does it is that he is just completely disadvantaged with his typing, and having only his main Bakugan doesn't even help him at that point, so by far, this was the easiest fight in the whole tournament. Our final opponent ends off with Mordok, which again is probably not his name, but I think I'll just stick with it for now. Even though this might seem like it would be kind of scary to face off against him, it's really not, since it's the exact same scenario with Masquerade with the whole type disadvantage and even missing his cards way more than he needed to. Even though I really didn't need to, I finished Mordok once and for all with a nice little double stand to finish the tournament. Or so you think, because right after this, we get a cutscene of Mordok's Bakugan talking to him like a dad after a baseball game that his kid lost. With that disappointment and a mix of anger, Mordok's dad decides to grab the ultimate beer from the fridge, making him evolve into an even stronger monster. Alongside that, the rest of the Bakugan brawlers unite their Bakugan's leftover power to evolve Leonidas to defeat Mordok once and for all. I do have some stuff to comment about this actual last fight because this is where I have a lot of problems, mostly from when I was a kid, but even now it's still one of the more difficult fights to do if you haven't done it already. As a kid, I still remember choosing the Chaos typing because it would make Leonidas white and gold, but as I got to this last fight, that ended up being the stupidest decision I had ever made because of what actually happens to the field. The field is no longer Chaos, it turns into a darkest map, so the people who were once not so dangerous are absolutely cracked out of their minds. And this is not to say that it's impossible to win with the Chaos typing, because you definitely can, but it really depends on one very thing, Leonidas. The main gimmick of this last fight is basically what a fist fight between two boxers would be, except with tiny balls, since we can only use Leonidas and his gate card, while the enemy can only use his respective monster and card. You might realize how bad that would be for 10-year-old me trying to win that fight. And so, I left the game there a long time ago where I tried picking it back up when I got older, but even then, it was still kind of impossible. That's where the whole idea behind what upgrades you've done to Leonidas come in, because if you didn't power him up at all, you're pretty much fucked. I don't want to say I soft-locked myself as well, because it might not fully be true. But there's not really much you can do since the park is locked, so getting money's out of the picture, and that means powering up is also just off the board. But let's move on from the past, because here we are, 15 years later, trying to beat this guy once more. But this time, I'm green. As we start off, we can try to strategize on this battle since there's a lot more to it than you might realize, because while fighting Mordok, his Bakugan actually has a power to remove a certain amount of G power when he sets down on his card. So the first strategy is to miss. I know it sounds stupid, but it's actually a really good one, as long as you don't miss again, because if you do, well, Mordok just gets the card for free. With that, the real part to think about is how this battle will go. Because if we look at my first attempt, I actually had to reset because I lost the first battle, which is detrimental to winning this whole thing. You might think I'm exaggerating, but let's go over how we need this to go and what actually happened that led me to winning. The first turns, I didn't really take my own advice about the whole G-Power thing, which is not great, but again, I am a moron, so what can I really say? Even with a slight advantage on me though, the first fight went pretty well since we weren't super far apart in power, but with Morlock not having an ability card, I can use mine to basically put me on top, which is just the norm. As for what routes we need to take, we do get a break on how we can get more G-Power, since breaking a crystal as shown on the screen and moving towards this jump pad that's lower to the floor, we can basically power up as much as we need to. But before you think it's going to be a sweep just because of that, that's really wrong, because this fight is going to be a back and forth match. You're going to win some, but you're definitely going to lose some. Trust me when I say don't feel too down about losing any of the fights. All you can really do is try your best and hope to be lucky, because on the second and fourth turn is where Morlock gets to use his cards. So by winning the first card, you basically start taking turns winning, which is pretty good since it can leave you to winning first rather than losing most of the time. I'm saying most of this stuff because all of this happened during the fight. I lost the second fight to Morlock, mostly because of the stupid ability card that quote-unquote randomizes the point distribution, which is absolute bullshit, but it's fine to tank the loss. The third fight was a timing battle, which is always a blast to me. I love this minigame, it just never lets me down, but I still had a big point difference between the both of us, which is where the ability card comes in clutch. The fourth round was another loss, but here's where tanking another one is going to come in big time, because Morlock just pumps his Bakugan full of everything he has when it comes to ability cards. I was equally as dumb, doing the same thing to Leonidas, because I wanted to be over with the fight, but just don't do that. With the final fight, I had ended up having a bigger power advantage along with an amazing ability card, and with a great minigame like metal shooting, I fucking destroyed this kid. I shat on his chest and disposed of the body. It was amazing. I'm kidding, but no, really. With that, I was able to beat Morlock and finally beat the game for the fourth time in my life. I've never felt prouder of myself. But that's not where it really stops, because we still have a bit of stuff to go through, so don't leave just yet, because this wasn't a beating Bakugan video, this is 100%ing, so let's get to the last parts. Also, I just want to apologize real quick before I move on, because a bit of the next footage is all in 16:9, so it's going to look a little bit wonky compared to what I had it at, but it will fix after a bit. So, what's first on the agenda? Well, we can start off with one of the more easier challenges on the board, which is beating every brawler at the park at least once. This isn't too bad, hell, I think you could just even put them on the easiest difficulty and use a map that you'll always do well in and go from there. As for what I did, I mostly just played everybody on hard because that's what they were set to originally, and used the Aquos map since I just balled so hard on this goddamn map. I mean, getting the power was easy, the crystals were even easier. It's easier if you didn't get that. But most of the battles were fun, nothing too crazy, especially when afterwards you can pretty much get any Bakugan you want, as well as use your newly evolved Leonidas who just destroys everybody else. I will say though, this is a little part I love about this game. Just being able to create any deck you want that can massacre these fights in pretty much a few turns is fun, but also just seeing unique fighters go against each other in so many different maps can also just be a fun thing to do on the off time. The next two things we need to handle are less difficult and more so tedious because we have to buy every Bakugan and card in the shop. What makes it so tedious? Well, the money gathering that I talked about in the beginning of the video, because while park battles can be a good source of money, the tournaments you can replay in are just next level when it comes to cash. Fortunately, looking back on it, I didn't have to do so many tournaments as I thought I had, but because we are pairing it up with the card collection portion, it can seem like a lot of grinding, but as I said, the tournaments help us out a ton. As for how that went for me, I kinda got super unlucky with my tournament picks because they can all be random, and as it so happens, I get the maps that I absolutely despise and suck at playing for the most part. The first four were in order of Pyros, another Pyros, Chaos, and Darkest, which the last two can be okay maps, but Pyros is just absolutely the bane of my existence. I just for the life of me cannot seem to grasp getting around in that map, but fortunately, it wasn't super bad. With all those four, I could buy out all of the Ventus Bakugan and most of the Darkest with the first tournament complete, then buy out the Darkest while getting some of the Chaos, and with the third and fourth tournaments, I finished off the Chaos along with the Pyros. I also want to say really quickly that you might notice some of the first Bakugan I already bought after the first tournament, but it's mostly due to me using the money I got previously from beating the game, so I just went ahead and bought more of the expensive ones. The last tournaments I faced off against were unfortunately Darkest and Pyros, because why the hell not, and I was able to buy everything from the Bakugan section of this game. I'm going to do you guys a favor and skip most of the card tournaments and information because I have no real way of describing anything I'm buying, but I will show off me buying most of them right now just to show proof that I actually did it. The amount of tournaments it took me to finish off the cards were around 4 to 5 tournaments, which wasn't bad at all since most of them I actually got the maps I favored, which were Aquos. Before I can actually say I've collected everything though, we need to backtrack to the Bakugan section for a very major reason that some of you may know. If you remember, I said we were able to use the evolved forms of all the mainline Bakugans whenever we want, but what I didn't mention is that we have to do something in order to actually purchase them first, so our job is not actually done. You might ask, well, what do we have to do? And I had the same question because I could not for the life of me remember what I actually had to do, But luckily, thanks to the videos made 14 years ago, we can get a little insight on where to head. For this part, I headed to the park because I needed to beat every character that had an evolved Bakugan on the hardest difficulty once more. I actually messed this part up the first time because I beat everybody not only once, but twice thinking you could do it on any difficulty, but the hardest is what you would need to go with. With a quick 1v1 on the Aquas map once more, if you can tell that's my favorite by now, I was able to finish off the last of the fights we need for the entire game to be complete, so let's finish this off. Going to the store, we can check out the new Bakugan we can own, with each and every single one just being absolutely beautiful in their own way. This is where I'll dialogue for a bit, so I'm sorry if you find this annoying, but this part is exactly what I love the most about this unique and very weird game. Everything else is cool and tuned alright, but the collecting aspect is what I truly love and yearn for more of these games. Having the ability to collect every single monster you can see before your eyes, especially the coolest versions of them that are locked behind paywalls or a battle pass, is just absolutely fun at its core. Especially having the requirement of just beating the brawlers that own these special guys on the hardest difficulty really makes you earn it. Mostly if you're a kid, but it's still a beautiful thing to realize about this game. It's a masterpiece in its own right. Is it the best? No. Is it the worst? Absolutely not. But is it comfortable enough to be its own thing and shine all these years later? Absolutely. So to finish off this fine-tuned game, I'll head to the shop once more, upgrade every type of Bakugan to level 5 to get every unique shot that you can use in the game to officially 100% Bakugan Battle Brawlers. This was a fun one. I had a lot of fun playing it and making this script. It's always nice to share a piece of my childhood and mind with everyone in hopes of reaching out to those who feel the exact same way. I will always cherish this game one way or another. So with that, I hope you absolutely enjoyed this video. Make sure to follow for more and make sure to check out my Twitch where I stream a lot of other games like this and maybe some challenges. With that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.